Last year, as you know, he testified that the U.S. has run a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there UAP programs operating without proper congressional oversight?
100%.
What are they?
Unfortunately, sir, I would have to have that conversation in a closed session.
I know you said that, and a lot of people are frustrated with those kind of answers, but we're asking those kind of questions so you all know what the heck we're up against.
This was just a brief excerpt from the second UAP UFO hearing of the U.S. Congress, which took place on November 13, 2024, in Washington, D.C. Since the New York Times revealed a secret Pentagon UFO research program in December 2017, this topic, now increasingly referred to as unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, has been discussed more seriously in the U.S. Whistleblowers have come forward several times to reveal their formerly classified knowledge. While not all of our viewers are happy that we continue to address this topic, the majority of our community has voted in favor of producing more videos on the subject. Last year, the first hearing featured 3 former military officials, including UFO whistleblower David Grush, who caused an international sensation with his statements that the U.S. government is absolutely in possession of UAPs and that non-human biologics were found at a crash site. Prepared statements. Each of the 4 witnesses began by reading a prepared statement. Timothy Gallaudet, an American oceanographer and retired Rear Admiral in the United States Navy.
Confirmation that UAPs are real came to me in January of 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Navy Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast. It included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, and this exercise was overseen by the United States Fleet Forces Command, led by a 4-star admiral who at the time was also my superior officer. During this exercise, I received an email on Navy's secure network from the operations officer of U.S. Fleet Forces Command. The email was addressed to all the subordinate commanders, and the subject line read in all capital letters, "Urgent Safety of Flight Issue." The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, "If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve this soon, we are going to have to shut down the exercise." Attached to the email is what is now known as the Go Fast video, captured on the forward-looking infrared sensor of one of the Navy F-A-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects. Because the DoD policy is to rigorously deconflict such demonstrations with live exercises, I was confident this was not the case. The very next day, that email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients, without explanation.
Luis Elizondo, formerly employed by United States Army Counterintelligence and the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. According to Elizondo, he was the director of the now-defunct Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP.
Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I've personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. This includes unwarranted criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Pentagon's very own Public Affairs Office openly employs a professional psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media. This is unacceptable. Many of my former colleagues and I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the Intelligence Community Inspector General, and many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. This is not hyperbole, but a genuine fact, and this is wrong.
Michael Shellenberger, an investigative journalist known for his work on the Twitter files.
One of Congress's most important responsibilities is oversight of the executive branch in general and the military and intelligence community in particular. Unfortunately, there is a growing body of evidence that the U.S. government is not being transparent about what it knows about unidentified anomalous phenomena, and that elements within the military and the IC are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their operations. President-elect Donald Trump and former President Barack Obama have both said that the government has information about UAPs that it has not released.
Michael Gold, a former NASA employee.
Science requires data, which should be collected without bias or prejudice. Yet, whenever the topic of UAP arises, those who wish to explore the phenomena are often confronted with resistance and ridicule. For example, members of the NASA UAP Independent Study Team, particularly those in academia, were mocked and even threatened for simply having the temerity to engage in the study of UAP. Our best tool for unlocking the mystery of UAP is science, but we cannot conduct a proper inquiry if the stigma is so overwhelming that just daring to be part of a NASA research team elicits such a vitriolic response. Therefore, one of the most important actions that can be taken relative to exposing the truth of UAP is to combat the stigma. And this is where I believe that NASA can be eminently helpful.
Highlights of the Q&A session. It may surprise some of our viewers, but the Pentagon, which employs 27,000 public relations specialists, apparently does not always tell the truth. According to Luis Elizondo, it has run a decades-long disinformation campaign on the subject of UFOs.
You also mentioned in your opening statement that the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office employs a psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for UAP-related inquiries. Why the heck would they do that?
Sir, that's a great question. I would ask the Pentagon. There's a long history here of that individual providing misleading and false information to the public through various news outlets and media outlets in order to discredit this topic. I've personally been victim to it. We have the documentation to substantiate where this information has been absolutely inaccurate, that has been provided time and time again, and it turns out that that individual was also working with former leadership of Aero at the time as well.
And we punish them by giving them multi-million dollars more than they ask for every year.
Additionally, the Pentagon does not act with integrity internally. As Tim Gallaudet explained, it has allegedly tried to intimidate whistleblowers and spread false narratives.
In your written testimony, you claim last year's UAP hearing before this Oversight Committee confirmed that UAP-related information is, well, it's not only being withheld, but that elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Could you elaborate on that statement a little?
Yes, sir. Earlier this year, I met with the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and what I thought would be a 90-minute meeting just to meet with leadership turned out to be an hours-long influence operation on me, where they attempted to convince me of the validity of the very flawed and error-ridden historical records report. In addition, they tried to have me question very valid UAP reports like the Tic Tac incident, and even coming to stating possibly that the Tic Tac was American technology. And then, of course, if you ask David Fravor or Alex Dietrich, the two witnesses, they were convinced it was otherwise. And then, and they also cast discredit on various UAP whistleblowers and witnesses to question their validity and credibility as witnesses.
We have previously reported that the Pentagon and CIA operate a UAP crash retrieval program, recovering landed or crashed UAPs for reverse engineering purposes. Unfortunately, Luis Elizondo has signed non-disclosure agreements that prohibit him from revealing further details.
Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year for it to be reviewed. And what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft, yes or no?
Yes.
The UFO UAP issue remains stigmatized due to decades of disinformation and media campaigns, making it difficult for scientists to engage with the subject. However, official hearings like this can help change that narrative. Michael Gold addressed this point eloquently.
Mr. Gold, you gave a whole diatribe for a couple of minutes about UAPs, science, data collection, stigma. A lot of non-believers in all of this would just ask a very simple question. Why? Why is it so hard? Right? Like, why are people, anytime they ask, why are they always thwarted? Why are they always judged? Why is they always have misinformation spread? Why is there always retribution? Why is it always met with an ear? What's the why? If it doesn't exist, why is it such a problem?
I think if you go through the history of science, Representative, it is always difficult for breakthroughs in new information, regardless of whether it's UAP or any other kind of discovery. And in science, we're supposed to be open, but when you break with the orthodoxy of what's believed, whether it's Galileo saying that the Earth doesn't rotate or the Earth rotates around the Sun or the Sun doesn't rotate around the Earth, it's always challenging for new beliefs. And the more extraordinary those discoveries, the more extraordinary those new beliefs, it's very difficult. So I think this is natural. There's natural conservatism that when it comes to science, but this issue in particular has been very difficult where, again, even to attempt to study it becomes problematic. But every hearing like this, every news report, every video, documentaries, I was privileged to be a part of something Dan Fair is putting together. I think many of us have interviewed for it, documentary over 30 different government officials. Every brick in the wall will help get us closer to getting to the truth.
I appreciate that.
Another intriguing aspect of the hearing was the discussion of unidentified submerged objects, USOs, and transmedium objects, which have been observed by the military transitioning from air to water, such as in the USS Omaha incident, and moving underwater at incredible speeds. The mention of Russian torpedoes is particularly interesting, as Russia is the only country to have developed supercavitating torpedoes, such as the VA-111 Shkval, which create a gas bubble around the torpedo and use solid propellant rocket engines to achieve extreme speeds.
Last question, Doctor, real quick, can you tell us about the Omaha incident in greater detail? I've read your background, right? Some people would label you as a member of the deep state, since you worked in government for a long period of time. But can you tell us more about that incident? You've written a lot about that.
I wrote a lot about incidents like it, Congressman, but that specific incident involved the USS Omaha, a littoral combat ship of the U.S. Navy operating off Southern California. I don't remember the exact date. It was within the last decade. And what the watchstanders on the bridge observed was a UAP, again, something that was aloft but had no observable exhaust or control surfaces. So it was something that couldn't be explained. And then they saw it enter the water from the atmosphere and going through the air-sea interface, and so thus exhibiting transmedium travel.
Have you specifically had any experience with submersible objects?
Sir, I've no personal experience, but I've had witnesses on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah,
how would
USOs.
how would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of and technology-wise could replicate that.
The most interesting questions came from Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna, particularly regarding the characterization of UAPs and the possibility of an interdimensional origin, a topic highlighted by David Grush's earlier statements.
How would you characterize UAPs?
An enigma, sir, and a frustration. We're talking about technologies that can outperform anything we have in our inventory. And if this was an adversarial technology, this would be an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude.
In our previous panel, we had Grush, and he had testified to say that some of these were interdimensional beings. Can you speak on that at all?
Ma'am, I'm not qualified, certainly as a scientist or otherwise, to speculate points of origin. I looked at everything from a scientific perspective. So if you look at, for example, instantaneous acceleration, which was one of the observables of the program that I belong to, AATIP, the human body can withstand about 9 G-forces for a short period of time before you suffer negative biological consequences, blackouts and ultimately redouts and even death. Comparison, our best technology, the F-16, which is this older platform, but one of our most highly maneuverable aircraft, manned aircraft, made by General Dynamics, can perform about 17 or 18 G-forces before you start having structural failure, meaning that the airframe begins to disintegrate while you're flying. The vehicles we're talking about are performing in excess of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Gs.
Another key question focused on the energy sources of these objects. They do not rely on fossil fuels, and no propulsion features have been identified to date.
Okay, the reason I ask is because it seems like, just based on our conversations, that we've had people that say that there are good and bad of whatever these things are. And so my concern from a national security perspective is A, that true? B, are you guys hearing the reports of that? And C, I think moving forward in regard to technology, Mr. Gold, if you can answer this real quickly, some of these aircraft, it seems that they are operating off of energy that we don't currently have. But just yes or no, in your opinion, if we were able to obtain that, would that impact humanity for the better or negative?
Would certainly save us some money on funding on Artemis.
Definitely.
And this is a national security issue, that if there is such technology out there, we're not the only country that might have access to it. We don't want to be on the wrong end of technological surprise.
Whoever, or whatever, is behind the UAP UFO phenomenon seems to be growing less concerned about hiding. Or perhaps our sensors and radar systems are simply improving, allowing us to detect these objects more frequently. Sightings over nuclear or military installations, in particular, seem to be increasing worldwide.
Mr. Elizondo, you just said something interesting. You said they don't seem to be hiding. They don't seem to be hiding. The UAP sightings are becoming increasingly brash, if you will. And, you know, we've been hearing about these for years, but they've generally been isolated and not as consistent and over critical military installations. Would you say that's fair? Is this becoming increasingly often? Is it happening more and more?
Great question, sir. Let me see if I can answer this for you. Certainly there seems to be some indication that they're being provocative, meaning that they're, in some cases, literally splitting aircraft formations right down the middle. So that's an air safety issue. The question is it the frequency increasing? And really the response is, it depends. Yes, it's possible that there is an increase in frequency, but it's also possible that there's heightened awareness now, and there's also more pervasiveness of technology out there that's collecting this information and that can record this information. So we're not quite sure yet if it's actually an increase in numbers of these events, or is it that we have better equipment now that to record these things, and we have a better ability, if you will, to analyze these things.
Conclusion. For those already familiar with Luis Elizondo's book, or Ross Coulthart's interviews on News Nation's YouTube channel, there were few new revelations. Instead, previously known information was supplemented with further details. The testimonies from this second hearing added credibility to the earlier witnesses' statements. In summary, the second UAP hearing substantiated earlier claims and demonstrated that UAPs are being taken increasingly seriously. However, many questions remain unanswered,